We're live.
Okay, thank you. My name is Neil Toft. I'm the Planning and Building Director for the City of Larkspur. And we are here tonight. I'm joined with Leonard Charles, our environmental consultant, to present and basically conduct an initial scoping session for our notice of preparation for the draft EIR for the draft general plan update, which we released in December. And before we get started, I'm going to have our assistant to city manager, who's helping manage this Zoom format, provide some information for anybody wishing to participate, how to participate. We're going to be giving a short presentation about the process to date and the process going forward. And you are welcome to raise your hand, and after each slide, at some point after each slide, Shannon can go ahead and let me know if somebody has a question about that slide. And if not, it would be preferable to hold your questions to the end. Primarily, the meeting is going to be a series of just any questions you have, comments you'd like to present at this time, and as well as information on the process going forward. So Shannon, if you can give any directions to the audience.
Yeah, based on audience attendance right now, I think many folks have joined us for other meetings, but just one thing to add, if you are experiencing any issues with the raise hand function, there's also the Q&A function enabled. So you're certainly welcome to type in a question there or let me know that there's an issue with the raised hand function, and we'll work it out to the best we can. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So very quickly, I'm assuming that most people in the audience are aware of the general plan. And the update. We've been in this process for many years, beginning with the Citizens Advisory Committee in 2010 through 2012, and then we continued it using a general plan steering committee. I'll discuss that a little bit later, but the general plan, again, it's a constitution for the city and its future development. It establishes a hierarchy of goals, overriding goals, general policies that fulfill those goals, and more specifically, action programs relating to the community's physical development. Again, a goal, broad objective, kind of an ideal future, generally conceptual, a policy, more a action to implement those goals. And a program is a very specific procedure or action. That may be, a program may be adopting an ordinance that achieves certain regulations or certain requirements or standards within the community. So the General Plan Steering Committee concluded their work on the draft general plan in October. Since that time, and in that draft, we did not propose any significant changes to the land use or densities prescribed under the current general plan, which dates back originally to 1990. And while it's had several amendments to it, the general structure of the zoning designations and densities has remained fairly consistent. We are proposing to add a mixed use designation for the Ross Valley Sanitary District site to provide some opportunity for moving around the types of uses that have been either already approved for that location or continue to be envisioned for that location, particularly looking for the retention of housing to meet our housing goals for that area, as well as some of the other needs for that specific site and the surrounding community. We are introducing more flexibility for changing commercial uses on built commercial sites. Larkspur is largely a built-out community. There are sites that have opportunity for redevelopment or reuse or change in use. And we're looking for more unified use and parking standards and a bit less traffic review. Currently, much of our zoning really breaks out, our general plan and zoning really breaks out uses to very specific types, applying a lot of very different standards to each type of use. And that can be rather cumbersome in allowing changes. So we're going to look at doing more unified use and parking standards. We've applied a neighborhood commercial designation to North Magnolia, the entire North Magnolia area. It largely mirrors the types of designation that is out there. Currently, there are 2 designations on each side of the street. So we're unifying that in one neighborhood commercial designation, which retains much of the character and flavor of the current 2 commercial 1 and commercial 2 designations for that area. We're also implementing open space and parkland zoning districts to meet the designations, because we do have open space and park designations in the general plan, but not in the zoning. So we're looking at a policy and program that would implement those as zoning districts. Those are just really some of the limited land use changes we're proposing through this general plan. Largely, again, it's been very limited in scope, and largely what we're doing is bringing the general plan up to meet current state mandates and to conform with more current best practices and standards of today, particularly as it applies to fire or safety regulations, as well as bicycle transportation sort of practices and policies as well. So there's a number of things we're doing that are more policy related. And I would say we've designed the general plan more as an overview document, generally a broad document. It will rely on many of the other documents, just such as the zoning, the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and the city's climate action plan, to provide more specific tools and implementation for those particular topics. So again, it's a bit of a broad document. So in the last month and a half, we've been putting finishing touches on the general plan. And we've also provided larger format document diagrams, which are available on our website. And these are the diagrams for land use, various health and safety related maps showing geography, soil types, fire hazard zones, flood areas. So these are done in a larger format where you can really drill down to specific sites to see where they're located within certain mapped or certain diagrammed areas. Now, for information, if you're not already on the list, you can get notifications for meetings, upcoming meetings, and activities related to the general plan by signing up on the Notify Me notify me for general plan updates on our website. Now, what we've done also in the last month is we've prepared and issued the notice of preparation, which the review period has begun earlier this week. We sent this out towards the end of December and posted it in city, mailed it out, and also posted it on the state clearinghouse of the Office of Planning and Research. So we've begun the process to conduct the environmental review for the draft general plan. This is done in parallel with the general plan review process. And we will begin further early consultation with responsible agencies. And we're conducting this scoping session really as an initial chance for anyone from the public to ask questions or provide preliminary comments. This is a preliminary opportunity to simply identify topics that should be covered in the draft EIR. We, of course, have already programmed in for a review, really, a very exhaustive analysis for the environmental review, but we're really welcome in receiving any comments on topics or specific sites or issues that we may have missed or may not be familiar with, and we'd certainly like to be aware of those before we prepare the draft. And there will be, of course, later opportunity to review the draft once we get that released. So there's going to be continued hearings, workshops upcoming as we begin preparing the draft EIR. So from this point, January up through May, we'll be preparing the draft EIR and conducting a lot of analysis and preparing modeling to help identify potential impacts relative to GHG, traffic, and circulation both in and around the surrounding communities. We will conduct informational workshops at both the Planning Commission and City Council. And eventually, as we prepare the draft EIR for release, we'll issue a notice of availability and again have a review and comment period on that before we go into hearings. From May through July, we anticipate conducting that 45-day public review period for the draft EIR. We'll again conduct hearings, take oral and written comments on the draft general plan and the EIR. We would anticipate at least 2 hearings at Planning Commission and 2 hearings at City Council. By July through August, we would prepare a final EIR, which is a response to comments and a final general plan with any recommended revisions as a result of those comments and or mitigation measures that would be identified through the EIR process. The city then certifies the EIR and mitigation monitoring and reporting programs. So with that, I do have Leonard with me. Leonard Charles is here to answer any questions as well about any technical aspects of the process or environmental analysis. And on this slide here, again, we are taking these again as preliminary comments. This is not the final straw by any means. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for review and comment coming up until February 4th. So I've given you up here is my address and my email. And of course, I'm certainly available for any questions and easily accessible from our city website. So with that, Leonard, do you have any other comments you wanted to add in before we go to the public?
Yeah, I would just like to add in that what this environmental impact report is a program level analysis of what impacts could happen from a projected build out under this proposed general plan 20 years from now, so in 2040. Now, obviously, there's a certain amount of ambiguity to that because we don't know exactly what it is, but we are going to, working with Neil and other city staff, make some estimates of what the potential build out of the city would be in 20 years from policies in this general plan. And then we will do a general or program level analysis of what the cumulative effects of that build out would be on various biological resources, traffic patterns, all the various elements that go into running a city, to see if the policies and programs that are in the general plan address those future impacts to a level where they hopefully can be made, quote unquote, less than significant. So what you have in front of you now is a draft general plan. The environmental analysis will see whether those draft policies and programs are adequate to meet those, addressing those impacts, again, at a program level, not at a specific project in a specific site, but at a general overall level. And if they're not, then we will recommend as mitigation measures, changes to those policies or programs or new ones that will then be considered by the city, whether they think that they are required, and they will amend this current draft general plan and come up with a final general plan that they will then consider for adoption. So that's sort of the aim of this process. So what we're looking for tonight is if you have any specific issues that you think ought to be looked at the program level, or any questions about the process.
And I do think one other thing to add in here is that in issuing the NOP, and then when we do issue the draft general plan and the notice of, the draft EIR with the notice of availability, these all go out, notifications go out to all of the local agencies as well, our school districts, utilities, all the various local agencies, Bay Area, water quality, air quality districts, and as well to the state clearinghouse, which sends these out to the various state agencies such as Caltrans and Department of Fish and Wildlife. So there's along with notification to the public, the interested public, there's a lot of inclusion and involvement with other agencies as well who do conduct a very thorough review of these goals and policies and potential impacts as it might affect how they provide services or what infrastructure or issues it may present for those various agencies. So with that, Shannon, is there anyone has a hand raised for questions or comments?
This time I'm not seeing any raised hands, and I'm not seeing, oh, I have one hand raised from Kevin Carroll. I'm going to go ahead and enable the allow to talk, Kevin, and you should be able to join us. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
Yep, we can hear you great.
A couple of questions. I live at the Marin Mobile Home Park. And I know one project that is contemplated coming up is the south section of the Greenway project. And so I'm curious is that going to be part of the scope of this environmental review? Is the environmental impacts of that project through our neighborhood and the rich concrete plant and the ecological reserve, is that going to be under this, or will that be something separate? And will Larkspur be the lead agency on that project, or, how's that going to work into all of this?
So Kevin, just to clarify, and I'm not sure we'll directly answer all your questions. We're really here to, we'll try to do that as best we can. We'll look at the policies. The general plan does actually refer and rely a good deal on the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. So we'll have to check to the degree that the bicycle master plan supports and includes the extension of the Greenway project from the south of the, and I think what you're talking about is the Greenway project south of Corte Madera Creek. Is that correct?
Correct. The part that's starting right now is along the freeway, but that's called the north section of that, but there's a south section of that that's supposed to cut through the RV park, the recreational vehicle park, and then come behind the mobile home park alongside on the old railroad right-of-way, which I understand from looking at the documents is in the county jurisdiction, but then it turns back into the Larkspur portion. And in looking at the Transportation Authority of Marin documents about it, it looks like it, I think, says that Larkspur is going to be the lead agency on it. So I'm curious if these issues we should be bringing up now in this document, or if this is something further down the road.
Neil, before you move forward, our city manager, Dan Schwartz, is in the audience, and he's actually I'm gonna enable him to speak to address part of this question, if that's all right.
Sure.
Okay. Dan, you should be enabled to speak.
Shannon. Mr. Carroll, the city's position is that the proposed portion of the South Greenway project that's in Larkspur, specifically the route that Transportation Authority of Marin shows going through the mobile home park where you reside, is not at this time an endorsed city project, and it's the responsibility of the Transportation Authority of Marin to secure permission from the property owner. If that occurs, then the city will then work with the Transportation Authority of Marin to amend our documents.
Yeah, and I think kind of adding on to that is the project is, from my understanding, would be a pretty specific project under TAM, potentially working with Larkspur, but the environmental review, again, this is a somewhat programmatic environmental review, so it may not be tailored to some of the specific environmental issues that come up with that project.
I think Neil, I just want it to be clear. That project has been shown on documents by the Transportation Authority of Marin. The city has never endorsed it. The city council has never said, yes, you can do that. The position of the city has been that project can occur when the Transportation Authority of Marin secures an agreement from the property owner. And the city's position is that that's something the Transportation Authority of Marin needs to do. So regardless of what their documents show, we're not going to incorporate it into our documents until it reaches that level of project.
So I'm still a little confused as to, because like in the current zoning regulations under the mobile home park district, it does recommend if the planning I believe it's if the planning commission designates it, a requirement for a 20-foot high either solid wood or masonry wall between the concrete plant and the mobile home park. And so would that apply to this trail if that's built on the other side of the plant? Does it have anything to do with the storage yard, which is currently leased by Rich Concrete, that looking at the documents I've been provided, looks like it's out of Larkspur's jurisdiction. So I'm trying to figure out, we have objections to dust and noise from that plant. Is this the proper forum for that, those objections, or should we be looking someplace else?
Well, I think if the issue that you're raising is more directly related to the plant itself and the dust and noise from the plant, that would be an issue that you could certainly raise as a comment for consideration. One of the things that we will be doing in the analysis is keep in mind that the current general plan does identify the area as a combination of both industrial and mobile home use, and adjacent as the existing designation, and the update does not propose changes to that. So the impacts of the continuing use as an existing non-conforming condition is it's unlikely that there would be environmental analysis specific to that unless we were introducing new changes of use or new conditions to that area, but the general plan is not proposing that. Leonard, is that a fair assessment?
Yes, the environmental impact report doesn't look at what the effects may be of existing conditions. It only looks at what the effects would be of proposed new policies and programs. Because the existing ones, while there's certainly, I'm not saying that there's good or bad about it, but it's just not, it's part of the existing conditions. It's not a change.
I'm sorry, I'm still a little confused, because if the proposed bicycle pathway does go through Larkspur's jurisdiction, isn't that a potential change in the future that would be covered by this 20-year plan?
It would not be a change under the designation or the land use. Land use is prescribed under the general plan. And the general plan may be broad enough or allow various uses, encourage bicycle transportation. And that analysis would probably be done at the time that the TAM comes in to secure the authorizations to do so, and then conduct more specific analysis of any direct impacts of that particular project.
Okay, so then essentially I should be keeping an eye on them and their actions into regarding that path.
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing to keep in mind is as a general plan update, this will be looking at a very broad picture of the overall community. And again, I think there's a good conversation. We want to invite any observations about, specific concerns. So that's, it's a valid discussion. But I think in that case, we're looking at a project that, again, the city has not fully authorized or endorsed at this point. So it's not written into a specific policy in our general plan that we would be analyzing.
Okay, I understand that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm seeing Mr. Curl, I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand and mute you again. You can certainly raise it again if you have another question. There is a call-in number ending in 1402 who has their hand raised. So I'm going to go ahead and enable the talk function, and you should be able to ask your question.
Hello, James Holmes. Pardon me. Incidentally, I was on the CAC for this back in 2010. Just as a follow-up to Mr. Carroll's comment, pardon me, I wonder if it might not be worthwhile to consider a policy to the effect that in the event the transit agency secures a right-of-way through the mobile home park, then the city's policy would be to minimize the impact, the adverse impact of that path on the mobile home park residences. Because, pardon me, as I recall, the CAC was quite interested in preserving the mobile home park as affordable housing. So the idea of minimizing the impact might be consistent with that.
Okay. James, did you have any other comments?
Yeah, I had a question, a couple of questions. Has the sanitary site been cleaned up yet?
Yes, it has. The cleanup was, I believe, completed earlier this year in the springtime or early summer.
I see.
And it was certified.
And the relevant agencies are written off on that.
I'm sorry,
I say the relevant agencies have written off on that so that it basically it's no longer an environmental issue as to the pollution.
that is my understanding, yes.
And which I guess would be noted in the plan, in the narration. Question about impact on water and schools build out. As I remember the EIR for the station area plan, pardon me, it took a rather narrow view of the analysis on those impacts. With regard to water, it just said, well, the water agency is statutorily required to provide water for any authorized development, and therefore we don't need to look into that any further. And then with regard to schools, I believe they said that statutorily the school fees that would be paid by the developer have to be considered as sufficient mitigation. And therefore, there was not any additional analysis of the impact of the station area plan on that. So I wonder, in general, realize the station area plan didn't go forward, but my question then is that, will the city be taking that kind of approach to water in schools, or will they be looking, and water in particular, or will they be looking into it in a little more depth?
Well, I'll start and then I might hand it over to Leonard a little bit. I know with water, the Marin Municipal Water Agency has and I'm trying to remember the technical term, but more or less like a 10-year water plan where they provide allocations to the city, and we will be consulting with them on that. Again, with the notice availability or notice of preparation that's gone out, that's included them. And so we will be circling with them on the availability of water. And again, we've also sent out notice to the schools. So we will be receiving comments from them and direction on any issues that may pertain to build out. And Leonard, do you have comments on generally how those impacts are addressed? Given that we do have regional housing requirements, we have housing goals that we need to fulfill. Leonard, do you have any?
Yeah,
comments on that?
we will definitely be looking at that. The MMWD, Marin Water, has prepared I forget the name of the plan because they come and go, but where they looked at their adequacy of meeting projected needs in the county under various drought scenarios, including 2-year droughts, and then I forget, they call it a worst case drought, which I think is a 5-year drought. So we will be referencing that and seeing, and as well as contacting them to see whether the potential increased development in Larkspur that could happen under this general plan would change their projections, or whether they think that they're still adequate to be able to provide water to the residents of Larkspur. So we will be looking at that. In schools, you're correct that what happens under various changes that happened in state law a number of years ago is that developer mitigation fees that are charged for new development for schools is considered adequate mitigation as far as educational needs for schools go, but it isn't necessarily true for building new schools. So if we contact a school district and they say, if you add X hundred new units, we're going to have to build new facilities. Well, then we will look at that, of what the impacts of that actual physical impacts on the environment would be from building new schools. But CEQA is pretty clear that the impacts that are addressed by CEQA have to do with physical impacts on the environment. And the state some time ago went, the impacts that have to do with impacts on the education of our residents are not an environmental impact. So we have to stick with that.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I figured. But so thank you. That addresses my questions. I think generally in reviewing the plan, it would be worthwhile to ensure that it does include adequate policies and goals and programs with regard to preserving the mobile home parks, and which I believe we included that when we were in the CAC, but it might be worthwhile to review that, particularly in light of the concerns that have been raised with regard to the impact of rents and change of use.
Thank you, James.
All right, James, I'm going to go ahead and mute you again and lower your hand. Then does anybody else have any questions? I've noticed a couple of folks have joined us a little later in the meeting. I just want to mention that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and to our YouTube page tomorrow for review, in addition to be able to contact staff. I'm not seeing any other raised hands or questions at this time.
Okay, with that, and Shannon, you did indicate we've had some people join just now. So just to reiterate, we've made a presentation, some background on the general plan update, how it's available, and you can sign up on our website for Notify Me for notifications of upcoming informational workshops and next steps, and the notice of availability for the draft general plan. We expect that further into late winter, spring. And with that, I just want to give anybody another chance to ask any questions, any clarifications or comments. And again, this is just the beginning of the comments for notice of preparation. It's really a very preliminary stage, and there will be plenty of opportunity to comment on both the draft general plan and the draft EIR at a later date in upcoming months. So again, and just checking, any further hands?
I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time, Neil. Oh, we have one more we have one raised hand again from Mr. Holmes. So I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
Hi, yes, thank you. Just one other point, and that is that I guess in the background of this is the recent much higher proposals for the housing element, and I wonder to what extent we are going to be looking at perhaps the narration. And I don't know how far that will go, but looking at the narration in terms of a defensive document, so that we make clear the housing constraints that we have, environmental and infrastructure-wise, and that we never had anything like a revenue planning where we deliberately brought in industry without providing for housing, and pointing out the fact that we've always taken a very emphatic position about integrating affordable housing into the projects. And in other words, perhaps to a greater extent than we would otherwise, consider this an advocacy document which tells Larkspur's story and sets the scene for any kinds of defensive maneuvers that we may have to take in the future.
Okay. Thank you. And James, I would just to kind of provide some framework for that. Number one, actually, to get back to your prior comment, the draft general plan does really retain the direction from the Citizens Advisory Committee, of which you were a part of, to preserve the mobile home parks, and does identify that should there be potential for redeveloping those sites, that it would include housing for any, really recognizing displacement of any residents, but at a minimum, preserving the mobile home parks, continuing to preserve as a resource for housing in that area, but also recognizing that with flood conditions and potential for redevelopment on some of those sites, that if there is redevelopment, that there would be a program to address both the displacement and to make sure that the housing is replaced, at least in kind, if not in greater numbers. So it does follow the same language that was adopted through the CAC. And then in regards to your last comments, this general plan is continuing, currently is drafted based on the densities and uses largely carried over from our existing general plan and our current housing element, which meets the state's guidelines. Now, we do know we're looking at some RHNA numbers, some regional housing need numbers for our next cycle that are going to be quite a bit larger than have been typical in the past. And we're going to begin a process of updating the housing element. And that's going to be about a 2-year process, and at which time we may need to amend or consider amendments to this general plan. But we'll be seeing and testing the ability to comply with those numbers and consider how to mitigate those numbers as part of this process.
Oh, okay, that's good, thanks. I just wanted to, I know that the general plan always includes a lot of narration, and I just want to encourage that the narration tells Larkspur's story and makes clear the many desirable things that we've already done before it was fashionable, including that we have the largest percentage of apartments, I think, multifamily housing, and that certainly should be mentioned several times.
Right, I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand, James, and put you on mute.
Okay, and if we don't have any other hand raised, I think we'll go ahead and conclude the scoping meeting. And again, just remind you that we can accept comments on any issues, topics of concerns. And again, you're welcome to email me or call me if you have questions. And I'll certainly try to help answer anything you have as soon as it comes up. So for that, I guess we'll conclude the meeting. And again, check our website, sign up for Notify Me, and you will be made aware well in advance of any of our upcoming workshops and any further documents.
All right,
For public release.
have a good evening, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Leonard.